Hey, welcome back to the Blue Collar Off-Road Podcast, episode 214. I'm Graham. I'm here with Luke and Richie. Cody wasn't able to make today. He's working at 1 in the morning tomorrow or something, or 2 in the morning, he said. And we have James Belcher on. James Belcher on the podcast. Now, you're a self-proclaimed AMC guy, so... And I don't have a ton of backstory in you. That's Luke is taking a phone call. I believe it's Logan calling him, who's been on the podcast. But I guess, James, let's start with, how did you get into off-roading? What was your first rig?
Well, my absolute first Jeep was a 1965 Tuxedo Park CJ5, and I was 16 years old, and that was back in 1971, back in ancient prehistory, before the internet. I didn't even the magazines were the only thing we had, but and back in my area at that time, off-roading consisted of finding a mud hole or a muddy hill, and so that's what we did. We went and found a muddy hill and tried to climb the hill, or we went and buried ourselves in mud holes and hoped somebody was left over to pull us out at the end of it.
I know a lot of people start like that.
So I actually got into real trail riding and off-roading probably about 27, not quite 30 years ago. I was reading Four Wheeler Magazine, and they had an article in their local club section at the front of the book back then, and they had mentioned a club called the Carolina Trailblazers. And since I was in North Carolina, I had never heard of them, and so I literally wrote a letter to the guy and reached out to him and said, look, I have been looking for this all the time because all the magazine coverage is out west and stuff like that. So I really wasn't aware of the real trail riding, off-roading scene in North Carolina up until that time. Prior to that, it was just local guys, or they used to have something called Mid-Atlantic Four-Wheel Drive Association that did four-wheel drive races. They actually did side-by-side drags on Saturday, and then four-wheel drive, like full-size Jeeps, Broncos, whatever, did motocross-style racing side-by-side on Sunday. And I had friends that was involved in that, so I actually got to help with that. But I'm the AMC guy because I love AMC era Jeeps. That's why once all the forums started on the internet or Instagram or anything but Facebook, if you look up AMC Jeep Man, that's been my screen name forever. Back in your pirate. Flat.
All right, even on Pirate.
Pirate was the shit.
Pirate was the stuff, and so much tech came out of that, and so much entertainment.
I still am trying to find the old double flip off emoji because I want to put that on some of my roof skin or like the roof line inside the cab. I miss those stickers and all of that shit from the forum days. You used to be able to buy them, and then
you could probably go on. Somebody's probably making a copy of it or something.
Yeah.
I'll have to look on Etsy now that you mention that.
Cody has one, doesn't he, on his
windshield? I gave it to him.
Yeah, so you've had them before. You just need to find them again.
They've just disappeared along with the Intel Dead Inside stickers. I can't find those anymore either. But c'est la vie. The cool part about the forums for me, though, was that there was so much tech that you could just go back to and reference, and you could just search along the lines of...
That was the great thing about it. It was searchable and updatable in that linear fashion, so that you could see the progress. You could come back and reply with results later on.
Yep.
But thing was it was searchable. There's plenty of tech on Facebook, Instagram, and the different groups, but you
Good luck
literally
finding it a year later.
Well, so
every
it's
single.
yeah, I agree. I think it's stupid that you can't search just on Google, right? You can't go and search some random question, have it pull up a Facebook conversation. I think that's stupid. I mean, I understand why it can't happen, but it would be nice. You can go into, if you're part of a group that is
Right.
specifically for whatever you're doing, right? Like I'm in XJ groups, I'm in Dodge groups and all this stuff. If I want to see some particular thing, you search what it is. You usually have to know what it is, and a lot of the times, ironically, you go to a forum and find somebody who did a write-up 10 years ago on this thing. The pictures are gone because PhotoBucket doesn't exist anymore, or whatever. They didn't pay for their PhotoBucket pictures to get, updated. So it's just text, so you have no idea what you're looking at because it doesn't have a picture. But then you can take all that, or whatever they're calling it, put that into a Facebook group, and then you can find pictures because there are pictures on Facebook of somebody who's done the same thing based off a forum write-up from 10 years ago. It's stupid. It's very roundabout now.
Even.
Yeah, it's you can do it. You just have to be in the right groups. Which is kind of gatekeepy. It's stupid. Like everybody used to just be able to go into a forum and make a name, and you still can. It's just people don't want to work that hard.
Traffic's not there anymore. I've been a moderator on NC4x4.com.
Okay.
I've been on NC4x4. There's a lot of good tech info there, but it's all like 10 years old.
Yeah, it's a good forum, but like you say, the traffic's not there. You don't see that. You don't see that constant update and fresh information coming out. Like you said, the information is years old. It's almost like so many of the older forums, they become archived. They're not even active anymore. You just go to the archive and look at it.
Yeah, and then you had that weird stuff go down with that Canadian company buying like Naxja and Pirate and all that other stuff and sucking some of the life out of it even further.
Who's that other guy that he just bought, like Hardline and a bunch of other forums too? Is that the same boy?
I don't think so, because the one that bought out Pirate was the reason that they had that whole irate pirate split shit that went down.
Yeah.
But the forums were awesome back in the day. Tons of good information.
It really helped the growth and the spread of the technology stuff that people was doing more than anything else I've seen. Because the magazines, they would try to present some tech, but 75% of that at minimum was all based on who their advertisers were. Where with the forums, you were seeing people developing stuff, and trying new things, and it just really pushed the sport and the rigs and the accessibility to trails and everything. It really drove the sport to take off like nothing else.
Now, with the username of Amcjeepman, I'm going to guess that you've had more than your fair share of the old AMC products. What is your favorite engine out of the AMC line? I have to ask because right now we've all been through it with an AMC engine.
For me, the best all-around AMC motor is the 360. It was used longer. I mean, I have a 401 in one of my CJ7s, and if you want to talk about numbers of Jeeps, I quit counting at 100 Jeeps owned over 10, more than 10 years ago.
Wow.
So right now there's between 15 to 20 Jeeps here at my house have 5 CJ7s, 2 scramblers, and a CJ5 that was my dad's. But anyway, going back to, I like the 360. The 401's going to be my absolute favorite, but the 360 is better for practical purposes because cost to rebuild is similar to a 304, but the fuel mileage is basically the same. And I'm thinking from a CJ standpoint. I've had them in full size Jeeps too, but I think more along the lines of a Jeep CJ. So for a 360 to swap into a CJ, it costs the same as a 258 or 304 to build practically. It gets basically the same fuel mileage as a 304 or a 258, and you feel like you got 50% more power, and you don't have to do anything. One good little small cam and a basic head job, and they'll make great power. And they, I've got one here that's got 90-some thousand miles on it, and it runs absolutely great. Just don't have any problems at all out of it. Probably fall apart tomorrow. Right now it runs great.
My experience has been only with the 4 liters, and up until the current Jeep I've had, I've never had a 4-liter problem. And then this current Jeep, it's just been I can't keep a 4-liter in it.
Well, I've got a 05 LJ with a 4-liter. It's got 130,000 miles on it. We've owned it since new, and it's great. They're great, but
well, it probably doesn't help that I'm buying the $250 junkyard special or $400 whole Jeep. You come get it special and just slapping it into a rock crawler and not really caring. Yeah.
Honestly, the best way to go about it, except for when it breaks when you own a truck.
Yeah. So I think I agree. I've never heard anybody really, because there's not too many people putting AMC 360s and stuff. So it's really, if you have one that's like in a Jeep, it's the motor you have. But I agree with you, and it's actually something we've talked about on the podcast before. So I've got this J20 that I think Luke said he talked to you about before we started here. A little bit.
We mentioned it briefly, but we didn't really discuss a lot of detail. He had just mentioned it in passing, more or less.
Gotcha. All right. So I've got this AMC 360 in this thing, and it's got a throttle body fuel injection that's caused me grief. But overall, up until like the past couple months, the motor's never given me an issue. It's always felt strong and, just been pretty reliable. And they were joking or making fun of me because I told them it felt like I had a bunch of power, like it was the most, dare I see, I've only driven pretty slow vehicles, I'd say. So I was like, it's got some pep. I put a manual in it, which made a huge difference in like how much power I felt. And I'm used to Jeep 4.0s and all this other stuff that's,
the Cummins.
The Cummins, the old Cummins, like it's just not, they don't have any kick. And the 360 feels like it has a little bit of kick. And it's probably a combination of things. It's been rebuilt in the past. So it's like a pretty good motor, all things considered, and it makes decent power. I don't know what it makes, but definitely more than the tired 4.0 in my Cherokee. So I don't know. It's been good, and then it threw the cam gear because the distributor wasn't matched. The gear wasn't matched. Somebody must have put a not matched pair in. Yeah, steel one or something.
Match they have to put in at the same time.
Yeah. So I had to put a new set of that in, and then it was leaking from the rear main seal, and the front was leaking because the timing cover, I put it together in 15-degree weather. So it was leaking from the front and the back. So I had at that point, now this is roughly where we're at now. I pull the motor out of the thing because I want, if it's going to be cold and I have to work on this, I'm going to at least do all the seals right and pull it inside somewhere where I can warm it up a little bit. pull the oil pan, just do everything. We pull it, do all that, get to the main bearing cap for the rear main seal, and the main bearing is like way more scored than I would expect a relatively recently rebuilt motor. Like the motor is very clean. I've owned it for 4 or 5 years. It's never been a daily driver. It's just something that I've had up until recently. I haven't driven it a ton, and pull this off, and it's like these bearings are almost smoked. It's like it was a bimetal like aluminum bearing, and you can like feel the scoring in it. There's nothing on the crank, but it's like this is the start of something bad. So
might as well unfuck it while I'm here.
Yeah, pretty much. So we did that. Did cam bearings, rod bearings, crank bearings, or main bearings. The whole thing. All of it thrown back in. I'm kicking myself for not putting a cam in it, but I don't have the cash to do that right now. And now it's got to go back in the Jeep. But hopefully after that, it'll be reliable again. But overall, I mean, the fuel mileage thing too. It really, not that I can really gauge because my fuel gauge kind of works. It's a
suggestion.
Yeah, I mean it runs out of gas at a quarter sometimes, so I don't know what it's doing, but it is using fuel, and I can't tell if it's more or less than the 4.0, but it's there. So yeah, that's been my experience.
Not, especially in a full size. They're not. They're like 8 to 10 mile per gallon motors.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make
right.
that they're any comparable efficiency to a modern fuel injected motor, even with a nice auto body setup. But they're pretty decent. A lot of people talk trash about the oiling systems on them, but they're actually pretty decent. Buick's similar, and they'll run a couple of 100,000 miles with decent maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
The issue nowadays is finding decent replacement parts.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since the supply chain issue problem that you had, and so many of the stuff being offshored to China the last 2 or 3 years, finding lifters that would hold up for an AMC 360 has been a nightmare. I know people that I follow some guys that do some restorations in like AMC, AMX cars and that kind of stuff. Of course, we'd put them in Jeeps and they'll brand new motor, wipe out a cam in first 15 minutes of breaking it in.
Oh,
and I know a guy that went through that 3 times.
That's crazy.
Run, and there's another guy locally who's on his 3rd time, and just fortunately by staying on top of on what it's doing with the guys that are doing these race motors and keeping up with the performance side of the AMC stuff, I had a couple of 360s I've had to build. I just got done with one for a friend of mine. We put in a 77 CJ7, and I've got one now. I'm doing an aluminum head 360 for a guy's scrambler. But there's only like two people that you can pretty much guarantee that you can get the lifters and cam stuff from.
Wow.
It's like
maybe
Howard's cams, and you can buy their lifters and run it with whatever cam you want, because they individually hardness test every lifter to and inspect it to make sure it's good. And you pay twice as much as what you used to pay for a set of cam and lifters.
Yep.
But you can get them.
And out a motor when you crank.
Wow.
So be careful with that stuff. New old stock before 2020 is pretty safe, but basically anything, it really all started showing up around 2021. I know Chevrolet had the same issue with some of their LS motors. All of that was related to the system where it, runs 8.6 or 4, whatever, 8 cylinders.
The DOD systems.
Yeah, some of it was directly related to the poor heat treating of the parts coming from China.
Heat treat's such a fucking bitch too.
Like,
that's kind of part of my line of work, and getting it right, even as someone that does it semi-regularly, I'll occasionally overdraw or underdraw something down and have to go restart or modify temperatures to adjust it and get it back to where I want it to be. And it's
Well, you
a
have
fairly settled science, but when with the quality of steel we've been getting,
to say
it
that's what
varies so much.
you don't know that the steel has the absolute correct um, mixture to give you that properties at your standard, heat treating values.
So this is an unrelated tangent, but O1 tool steel has gone so far downhill it's not funny. I remember when I started my apprenticeship, we used to heat treat it with like an oxyacetylene torch, get the thing glowing, dunk it straight into the oil, and then, you know, throw it in the oven at 375 for I forget what the calculation was, but it was like every square inch 30 minutes or so. Um, and it would always come out great. You could heat treat parts almost instantly. The drawdown was the longest part of it. Now they have to get done in our actual oven so they can sit at temperature, and then when you go and quench them, sometimes they just won't fucking harden. And it's really weird to see. And I've been doing this for 12 years, so I don't have a good explanation other than quality control slipping on everything.
It is. The quality of the materials is dramatically worse than what it was even 5 years ago, but definitely worse than what it was 10 years ago. I did machine work for over 20 years myself.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you'll get one lot where it'll heat treat just fine. The next lot of steel that you bought from the same vendor that came from the same mill, totally different process required to get it to behave.
Get it to come out to what you want. Yeah. That's what we we tested everything that we had to heat treat. Uh, just because of the unreliability of the material to make sure we could achieve the hardness we were wanting.
Yeah, that's the point that we're at, and it sucks. You'd think that in 2025 it would be a bit better, but hey, here we are.
Well,
Back to
it,
off-roading.
I'll let
Because
you
I
talk
can sit here and bitch about 2025 for hours.
about
Let's see. So, with the amount of Jeeps that you had being, in the hundreds, what's the particular favorite one that you've got kicking around at the moment?
So the reason I have more than one is I think I build them for different uses. So I have one that's the one I call the last one. In other words, it'll be the last of the house. Is a 86 CJ7, and I trail rode it. It was one. It was actually the Jeep that I've had the longest now, and it's a 86 CJ7. I've got a 401 out of a Javelin in it. It's a factory TF 999. It's just it actually the last of the 86s. They're one of the rare Jeeps that came with a Dana 44 rear axle, and I narrowed a Dana 44 out of a Wagoneer to put in the front. It's a Dana 300. I had a 4-to-1 kit in it, but when I quit trail riding that Jeep specifically, I took it out. So it's my favorite Jeep here. But the one that's the most versatile I have is I had a friend of ours in the club lost him to liver disease several years ago, and right before he passed, he called me one day and he said, "Look, I want you to buy my Jeep because I know you'll take care of it." And so he threw a number out there, knowing that I couldn't refuse, and I bought it. And it's just a good all around Jeep. It's also a '86 CJ7. It has a 258 6-cylinder in it, and believe it or not, a T5 5-speed, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody. But it's geared 4-to-1, 410s. I run 35s on it. And it's just, I drive it down the road. I can drive it a couple of hours down the road. I can go wheel on it as long as I'm not trying to do anything like buggy lines. And then get in drive it home the next day. And I will put a 360 in it before the year's out because I've got a fresh AX15 and a nice 360 to go in it. But it just runs so good. I've not been in any hurry to do it. But it's the one that I feature on my Instagram sometime called Rick's Jeeps. It's a blue '86 Laredo, and it's just a great fun Jeep to drive.
Nice.
And I like the CJ7s. I like the size. I like the wheelbase. I've got a lot of good friends that have scramblers, and I have a couple scramblers, and they all want me to build a scrambler to wheel and to drive and stuff like that. But I hate to tell them, but my favorites are the sevens.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like.
Are
Sorry,
you
go ahead.
Are you keeping the suspension, or are you changing over to coils and links and shit, or are they still all leaf sprung?
I'm old. Remember, I've got an old 2.5-inch lift kit on it, and a little bit of a body lift to clear 35s, but keep that low center of gravity build. But I run leaf springs on all my stuff. Maybe if I had I've got a 05 Rubicon LJ too. I trail ride it. It's obviously it's Coles but I don't have any custom built links or anything like that. Just I do modify my springs, and I've run like Wagoneer springs or YJ springs or something like that. I'll do that. But I haven't really. I just like as I went through a period where I modified all my stuff, trying to build it better and better. But as I've gotten a little older, I've decided to kind of bring it back and move back into just the classic Jeeping. And I'm 61 now, so I don't know how much bouncing and hammering and hardcore kind of stuff my body's taking. So I'm trying to just kind of ease myself into doing maybe more moderate trail riding than what I would do, say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
There ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I will say that there's definitely been a couple of points in time where, like, I've gotten back from one of our long trips and I've been like, yeah, no, this is great. I beat the ever-loving fuck out of my body. I can definitely tell that I've been wearing harnesses for the last 3 days in a row. This is excellent.
Last time we went to Good Evening Ranch, I busted the windshield, bent the windshield frame. I've got another CJ7 that I trail ride for harder stuff. I'm running 37-inch stickies on it, still leaf sprung, 4-to-1s, fuel injected 360 and a 4-speed. And I hammered the body so hard it actually you can't open the door it's just soft doors, but it was November wheeling. But it tweaked the body and moved it on the frame and everything. And I got back from that and I said, yeah, that hurts. It took a couple of days before I felt like really being out in the shop and working and messing around again, just because of the beating that I took riding the Jeep.
I get it. It's not easy on your body. The seats and the harnesses definitely help, and I'm really glad with like the level of bad driving that I like to bring to the table that I have the seats and harnesses. If I had stock seats and stock seat belts at this point in time, I would probably be a shit ton more sore than I am after a weekend in it, but yeah. At your age, I don't blame you for toning it back a little bit, and it also gets kind of old having to deal with frames and bodies being shoved around and having to get stuff to open up nice again. I just kind of
Like I said, I've
that.
built that particular Jeep to beat on, but it's been beat on enough now. It needs either rebuilding or starting from scratch, and I just don't know that I want to build that kind of wheeler anymore. So
I
I'm
think an
leaning.
Overlander CJ8 would be cool as hell. Just simple, like 44 and a 30 combination out of a newer Wrangler to put some bigger brakes on it and go and enjoy the hell out of it.
Do you know Jake White? that runs Cardo Tracks?
I do not off the top of my head. I
He's
probably have heard of him, but
he does Cardo Tracks, and and that's basically what he has. He has a Scrambler CJ8, and he drives it all over the country. Like he'll drive it. He lives in Alabama. He drives it out to Trail Hero out in Utah, and it's so funny how he ended up with the Scrambler. He he grew up in a family that had Jeeps, but he went up to one of the Scrambler Association rides, and during that time they were actually building a Scrambler to give away, and he won the raffle Jeep. And so he's actually got this Jeep that he won in the Scrambler Owners Group or Scrambler CJ8 Club that they've got, and has kept it and continued to maintain it. For the longest time, it had the 258 and the 5-speed in it. And he just recently, within the last couple of years, put a LS in it, but he's still running the Dana 30 front end, and it had a 86 CJ Dana 44 rear end. I think he's going to upgrade the axles a little bit because of what he's towing and what he carries with him now. But yeah, that's basically what he's got. He's a cool guy too. You need to talk to him. He's got some good stories as well. Super nice guy.
sounds like it. So being out in North Carolina, I'm gonna imagine that you've wheeled the Uwari or Uwari, however you say that. But where else have you been around the area? I'm kind of curious myself because I'm over near bottom part of Appalachia, and
So
there's a lot of good stuff here.
So I ride the group that I had mentioned earlier that I got in touch with, Carolina Trailblazers. I joined them back in 1997, and we basically wheel the southeast. I've wheeled Paragon Adventure Park, if you remember that, up in Pennsylvania. Wheeled
That
it a
was
few.
before our time.
It was before our time, but we've heard a lot about it. And we've heard a lot of that it was a good park, and there's talks of it coming back, but I don't know how true they are.
I'm not holding my breath anymore.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. I'm gonna say of all the places we've lost, even above Tellico, I miss Paragon the most. So anyway, we wheeled Good Evening Ranch in Canvas, West Virginia, and if you haven't heard of that place, you need to. Right now, it's probably one of the best places on the East Coast.
We've heard of it. Yep.
We've had a history with them, and we're just going to leave it at that.
Well, we love it, and we love the people that run it. We're very welcome up there, and we like wheeling that a lot. Kairos in Princeton, West Virginia, is another nice park. Yeah, I think it offers more. It's got a couple of tough trails, but more and more riding, just riding through the mountains. Some good creek crawls, few not nasty hill climbs, but just riding up and down on the ridge lines and that kind of stuff. Good riding. Of course, Uwari is our backyard. We hold 3 events in Uwari every year. Our club holds our annual fun caravan, and since I'm the mouthpiece for the club, I get to do all the begging for raffle prizes, and then I run the raffle. And then we do that and have a dinner. We do 4-wheel drive games, and then ride in the forest. And then for the last, I think, 13 or 14 years, we sponsored a veterans ride in November down there. And we take veterans out in the forest and have a fundraiser and raise money and raffle for them to give to veterans. And then so we're there in Uwari a lot. I've ridden Uwari a lot. It's one of those things where Uwari's like, do we have to go back to Uwari? But any dirt's better than a highway, so we go. But we've ridden, of course, Harlan, ride Windrock. I ridden Tellico before it got closed. Used to go to the Dixie Run. Golden Mountain. Love Golden Mountain. I'm glad it's opened back up. I have ridden AOP, but only once. I love to get back out there, but it's an 8-hour drive for me.
Yeah, I get that. I'm excited about Golden Mountain. One of my plans this year is I talked with Wyatt Green a little while ago. He's out of the Midwest, but they're going to an event there, and I'm gonna see if I can make it. All of the stars are aligning, and it's looking pretty good. I just have to see what my work schedule ends up looking like closer to the end of September.
We'll be there in March. We're riding, club's riding there in March.
Hell yeah.
We're going back to Good Evening Ranch in April.
I think I'm probably going to be doing Harlan in April is the next big calendar event thing that I have on my to-do list. Um, right now, with the minor misfortunes with the truck and with breaking the axle shaft in the Jeep, I'm just gonna get those fixed, and I'm gonna get the Jeep fixed on 35 splines. Um, gonna probably buy a new set of unit bearings and bore them out so that way I can just be one and done, complete, swap everything out and swap everything over and have it be all nice and new. I might even put new brake pads in.
Hey,
Getting fancy.
don't get all wild now.
Hmm.
Yeah, well,
I think
you know,
I'm
spend it.
looking. One ride I'm looking forward to. Several of us are going to go do the Rubicon Trail in July.
That looks
That's
like a good
sweet.
fucking time.
Talk about a bucket list.
Mm.
I've literally read about the Rubicon Trail probably since I was 12 years old. I think that's when I first started getting the off-road magazines.
Mhm.
So we have a guy in our club that moved from California about 4 years ago, and he's done that. They did their club did the trail Rubicon at least once every 2 years, and then sometimes a few of them would go other than that. But he's ridden it 10 or 12 times, and so he's gotten up a group of us, and probably 15, 20 members of the club, maybe if that many. We're going to make the trip out west in July and hit the Rubicon. Try to spend 3 days on the trail.
That is most definitely one of my biggest bucket list trips to do.
Yeah, I would put that almost over King of the Hammers.
Yeah, I mean for me, yes.
King of the Hammers is awesome, but it's a race you're watching unless you're working with a team. I mean, I know enough people I could probably go, uh, volunteer on one of the races. But that can't beat actually being out there trail riding, like on the Rubicon and camping out on the trail and experience and all of that. I know the area is absolutely beautiful. And the trail is awesome, and it just
Yeah, if I were to do KOH, it would have to be a week long or more than a week long trip so that way I could be out there, wheel out there, watch the race, and then come back.
yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it. The Rubicon's cool because it's just about going and doing the trail.
Right. And there's actually a couple of other trails close by, uh, too, that I've got some friends of mine uh, who live out on the West Coast are supposed to show us that you can get to in like an hour from there, less than an hour from that trail, and do like in a day. So might be able to knock out a couple of other trails while I'm in the area.
Yeah, and I'm kind of jealous of the way that it works out there. From what I understand, that's all like Bureau of Land Management land that you can go out there and wheel. We don't really have that over here in the Southeast, and that definitely wasn't a thing in New England. So there's a lot more opportunities, it seems like, out there for wheeling.
I
I might be
believe
wrong, but
when I my personal feeling is when I was standing in Johnson Valley, I could be at more trails standing there in 15 minutes than I can drive to in my house within 8 hours. There's that, and that's just one spot. and then you've got all of Moab, you've got Sand Hollow, you got Las Cruces, all of that, within, that's just got tons more trails to ride where we have to go, like, closest thing I ride's like 3 hours away, not counting Uari. Uari's an hour and a half from my house. Oh, but to really get something that's got some good trails, I gotta drive a minimum of 3 to 5 hours. And then you look at Harlan's 5 hours, AOP's 8 hours, Golden Mountain's like 7.5 hours. And then, like I say, you could stand in the middle of the lake bed at Johnson Valley, and in 15 minutes, you can be in more trails than all of those I just named.
Believe it. I do like the Southeast Wheeling, though, because the Southeast Wheeling has its own special little flavor to it, and that flavor is the Southern Beatdown. So
Yeah, no traction. Skinny
no
pedal.
traction anywhere, ever.
That's not true. There's traction some places.
Yeah, when it doesn't rain for 3 weeks in advance, you get a lot of traction. It becomes cheater mode, and the easy trails become super easy trails.
Mm-hmm.
You
then
still have traction if you have fucking tread.
You don't need that.
Fucking red labels.
I don't want to hear it. You just replaced your tires. Like how long ago, Richie?
I
You were running
have.
Baldies for a while. I don't want to hear it.
Oh, hold on. I have a whopping 80 miles on the tires.
Yeah, exactly.
80 trail miles is pretty good, though.
Mm-hmm.
No. That includes mostly road miles.
Oh, okay.
So they're
I'll
brand new.
Yeah, no,
right?
they're brand new.
Mine are stickies. Richie's were not.
I just bought some of the Baja Boss X Dickies. Got 2 trail rides in on them, so that's a new experience for me. I've run TSLs or creepy crawlers or stuff like that for the last 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really happy with mine. There was a couple of clear-cut examples of a sticky tire doing sticky tire things this weekend at AOP. But they are, for all intents and purposes, just a stickier DOT mud tire.
Yeah.
And that's cool. They do what they say they're gonna do.
That's why we pay the money for.
Yeah, it was. We were at Trail 65, which is one of the exits out of 41, and I was able to make it up the V-notch and the harder way out. Logan ended up having to take the dirt bypass because he couldn't get in, and our rigs are pretty damn close as far as the he's got a slightly shorter wheelbase, but it's 40s on a Cherokee with a 4-liter and a 5-speed.
Yeah. That's like last time we were at Good Evening Ranch. One shot keyhole coming out of it, and I thought that was pretty nice. Everybody else that was in there was having to work hard to get out.
I had a relatively easy walk out of the exit of Cripple Creek when I was there. That was my first ride on them.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it was a try and a half because the first half try was just getting me facing the correct direction, and then back up and gently roll in, and it just walked right up, and then proceeded to drop the power steering cooler. But hey, that's minor details.
That's it. Most of the guys in my club are running like 35s, 36s. So a couple of guys on 40s, but most of the groups in 35s, 36s. So when we run Cripple Creek, you're getting your money's worth.
Yeah.
You're gonna pull some cable, and you might have to stack a rock or two, but it's hey, that's what you're there for, is to if it was like riding down the highway, it'd be boring.
Yep.
We We've ran Cripple Creek in 20 minutes, and we've ran Cripple Creek in 8 hours.
That's a good way of putting it.
The truth.
All right. Speaking of trail rides, there was a you can't ride it anymore, but there was a trail in the Robbinsville area of North Carolina, in the Joyce Kilmer National Forest, called Little Buffalo. It was 6 trail miles. And one day our club took 13 and a half hours to do the 6 miles. We got into the trail, got on it good right around 10 o'clock, and pulled into the campsite where we camped, because camped on the trail on that particular one at 1:30 in the morning.
Lord.
At one time, the one of the guys that's one of the like real older members of the club, he stood there and he counted 11 different ones of us winching at one time.
Jesus.
I broke a front axle on my Jeep on that trail. I had a couple lay over, but the biggest thing was there was no traction. You would be hammering it on a slight incline and come up on a rock about the size of not even a soccer ball, and you just couldn't get enough traction to get over it, and you couldn't get enough traction to get momentum to bounce. It was just the soil was so freaking loose. It was just nothing there. You dug down more than you went forward.
Yeah, Graham will understand this. You know the top section on JW4 where it's got the 3 like individual lines at it?
Hmm.
We've ran it a couple of times together.
Yeah,
You know.
where you've got the lower like spot and the middle spot and the yeah, I know what you're talking about, I think.
I was in the middle line over there, and it was so fucking sloppy that I had to hit it in third to get it to bounce up onto that rock pile, and then I was just getting stopped by like 2.5, 3-inch tall rocks because it was so fucking wet and sloppy that just driving over the dirt was causing water to come sloshing out of it, and that's where an axle shaft decided that it was just tired of this shit.
To go.
Yep.
It's hard for people that have wheeled so much out west or wheel where it's dry and stuff like that to realize how so little can keep you from going, because there's nothing there.
Well, the part about this that pisses me off is this is like a trail that we would normally take people on 35s to go and run if it was a slightly drier weekend. And yet, here I am. Yeah, it's a 30 splined and a 60 shaft, but it just completely left the chat. It was a chromoly. It didn't even whimper as it left. It just, all of a sudden, the wheel was turning, and then it was not turning anymore with a little pop.
Bang, done.
Yep, and it just broke at the back of the slug. So right at the edge of the splines, it said, "Cool, fuck you, I'm done," and back to the parking lot you go.
Yep. No, there's nothing more frustrating when it's like so slick out that you can't even make it up a slight incline, like you were saying. One little thing in the way, and then you're done. You can't do anything but winch.
It took us 2 hours to run 41. That's normally like a 20-minute trail.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's short. That's a short trail typically.
And it was just everywhere that we came into contact with any dirt, you were shit out of luck. If there was any dirt at the bottom of the obstacle, get fucked. If there was any dirt at the top of the obstacle, your tires were not pulling when they got on top of whatever you were trying to climb. So have fun. Second, third, and sometimes fourth if you were trying to get it out of the greens pretty well. Yep, fucking mint.
Yep.
So Have you done the traditional 1-ton swap and all of that other fun, stupid stuff that comes along with it on a CJ, or have you been more in the small axle side of the house?
On the small axles, I'm gonna say every time I've had I've had 3 different sets of tons here at the house. And fortunately, I've gotten smart and sold them before I went down that thing. Because every time I look at it, it's like tons. Okay, yay.
Mhm.
Well, $10,000 later, by the time you buy gears and axles and tires and wheels, because I mean, I'm not going to do tons and run 40s. I'm going to run 43s or something like that. I'm not wasting that bullshit. If I'm going to spend tons, we're going tons.
Yep.
And fortunately, no, no, sell that crap. Let somebody else do that. I'll help them, and I'll just stick with my little stuff and my Warren 8274. It keeps pulling cable, and if I get in about enough spot, it'll pull cable, and
Yep.
I'll do the cable walk of shame and keep on wheeling.
It's a fast cable walk of shame, though, so you're good.
Yeah.
Those things are fast. They're so fast.
Hurt you if you're not careful.
Yeah.
The old winch walk of shame is perfectly acceptable at this point. I'm fucking
Oh, yeah.
lazy.
All of the it's funny. I was talking to some of the guys that wheel Europe, and they're like, "Man, what's y'all's biased against using a winch?" I said, "Well, look, for us, it's like you couldn't make it, so you winched." And they say, "Well, for us, winching is part of making it."
Depends on the trail, and I guess the goal usually too.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
if we're
like
just trail wheeling, it's kind of embarrassing to have to pull out the winch. If you're out there doing something stupid, there's no
right? Yeah,
shame in pulling the
that's a different.
winch.
That's right. Yeah, that's a different category.
Um,
But if you're going along and in a group of say 5 or between 5 and 10 guys, and you see 3 or 4 make it, and then here you are, you need to make it. You want to pull cable.
Yeah.
it's
You don't want to have to
generally
deal with that backlash.
it's worse when you've been at the back of the group and you watch the first guy walk up it, second guy walk up it, third guy starts struggling, and you just watch everyone else having a
Yeah,
harder and harder time, and you know that you're,
it worse.
yep. But 3/4 to, 7/8 of the people are going to make it without winching, so you got to be part of that group because you got to be the cool guy. And that generally ends up with more broken Dana 60 shit.
I was gonna say that's a good way to break parts.
Well, so what's your excuse, Luke, when you're the first one and you fail miserably?
I can't drive. I'm retarded. Pick your poison.
He's breaking the trail.
Yeah, I didn't have anyone showing me the line.
Out in line. Why you go second or third?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the problem with going second or third is then when the guy that or then when you end up fucking that up inevitably too, someone showed you the line. So it's sometimes better to just be first. That way you can fuck up and have an excuse. Although then when you end up making it first shot, everyone else after you complains that you tore the trail up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's their excuse if you make it and they can't.
Looking at you, Logan.
Sounds like we're just looking for opportunities to make excuses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically. So I know that you were talking about the CJs. Has there been any other like fun full size stuff that you've done, or has it just been mainly the CJs? And if so, what's the draw of that platform to you? Besides,
This
it's just a fucking CJ and they're cool.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know what it is. I honestly have always loved CJs. I owned a really nice J20. Let it get away, but I didn't really trail ride it. I used it as a tow rig and drove it I actually daily drove it for a while, but daily driving a 401 that gets 6 miles to the gallon grows
Yeah.
old. So I ended up buying a diesel truck. But as I don't know, for CJ, for me, the open top is just the epitome of the I can go anywhere, adventure, be out in it vehicle. Uh, and I like all of those, and not just the CJs. I mean, if I've never owned a YJ, but I would do a YJ. They got a good frame. You'd have to put a V8 in it, obviously. 6-cylinder wouldn't be enough power for me, but I would build a YJ, and I've got, like I say, I've got an LJ with the 4.0, and it's a LJ Rubicon on 35s. And I drive it. It's just a good, fun vehicle. But that size of vehicle and being able to take the top off, it is key to me. You're more a part of what you're doing, I think, by being in an open top vehicle with just a cage.
I can respect that. I've got a lot of love for the YJs because I always felt like the YJ was the CJ that kind of got the ugly treatment, and like it was trying its best, but it just kind of was always the weird stepchild of the Jeep family, if you will.
Like I say, they got a lot of great features. The frames are nicer, better to build off of if you're starting from scratch with a leaf spring vehicle. I mean, thinking like that. Obviously, if you're going to do coils or coilovers or air shocks or whatever, you can build whatever you want. But I think the frames are sturdier or better made than the CJs. Tubs are the same. Oh, their only downside down from a stock standpoint was they put miserable rear ends in them and mediocre transmissions. Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, well, that was easy enough to unfuck.
yeah, right,
The
exactly.
only
I mean,
downside I would say is that if you have to start unfucking the rear axle, it's very easy to wind up at, I'm just going to put tons under
yeah,
this
just
thing.
put tons under it. Yeah. If you're smart enough to do that from the beginning, like, hey, I'm gonna buy a YJ and I'm gonna build me a vehicle from scratch or a TJ, whatever. Yeah, I'm not wasting time. I'm not spending a nickel on a Dana 30 locker or a set of RCVs or any of that crap. We're
Yep.
going with. I did own a 1-ton Chevrolet 4-wheel drive truck back in the day, back in the 80s when big trucks were cool. It was on 44s, had a big block Chevrolet in it. 14-bolt rear with a Detroit locker, 513 gears, and all of that good stuff. But that was back
Hard
in
to
the
beat
day.
the 14 bolt.
Yeah, hard to beat. Tough axle. I broke 5 Detroit lockers.
Jeez.
I'm not a big fan.
Understandably so. If I
In
broke,
my dedicated trail Jeep, I run a spool.
I run a Spartan up front with welded out back just because I've got the Sterling rear axle and no one really makes a spool for it. So there's a couple of companies that are starting to make spools, but they're like $500, and I have a hard time paying $500 for a spool.
Really? They make a spool for an AMC 20. Surely they make one for a Sterling by now.
They definitely do. I haven't personally looked one up, but there is no way they don't.
They didn't used to. There have been a couple of companies that are doing it now. They're too expensive for what they are, in my opinion, at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I'm a bigger fan of the welded.
A bloody
That's
spool ought to be, that should be one of the cheapest options.
You would think.
Here's one for $600.
Yeah, like
and buy a 14 bolt.
At that point in time, I'm just going to break out the old Lincoln Electric with some murderous intent to those spider gears. We're
That
gonna
is
cut
what
some.
I was waiting for.
We're gonna cut some bolts. We're gonna cut some plates. We're gonna burn that thing in as fucking hot as possible and forget it exists.
No, what you're supposed to do is just think of the wackiest thing to throw in there, so that way the next time someone else goes into the axle, they're really fucking confused.
World.
Weld
That's what I like.
weld a pair of nuts in there and a bolt for a nice cock and balls in the rear end.
Yep.
I should do that on the next one that I weld up. Fucking explain that one down the road. Let's see. So, with all of the AMC products, what's the worst AMC failure that you've seen? Because I'm just curious. I've got a bad history with AMC products.
As far as catastrophic failures, we had there was a guy that had a race Jeep that had a 304 in it, built by a very famous local engine builder. They're no longer here, but they were called Golden Shamrock. And the guy raced the Jeep, and it just put so much power down. It literally, he never could get it to hook up. And so he sold the Jeep, and another friend of mine put it in a Jeep and made a tractor puller out of it, but it's still in the small, what they call the small 4-wheel drive class. And so he like won first place year after year after year, was beating out guys with big block Chevrolets, big block Fords, all that stuff, just killing them. And so later on, they sent this motor back to Golden Shamrock and had it freshened up and checked and everything like that. And a friend of mine started mud bogging it, literally standing there on the time. I said, well, I said, just whatever, hammer it as hard as you can hammer it. I said, because this motor has been through hell and back and has never come apart. And so he hits,
Famous
and
last words.
right, literally, because it launched that motor. It broke the crank at every journal.
Oh,
Never, I've never personally seen a V8 break that bad. And I know the motor had been run harder, but when it let go with everything it had. There was nothing salvageable. It ruined the block, the crank, the rods, the pistons, damn heads. The only thing that they got but at the end of it was the intake manifold. It was, I mean, they were pulling chunks out of it.
I think the worst I've ever done personally or seen is we had a 4-liter down at the shop that was in my rig. It split the crank, wiped a lobe off of the cam, and dropped the number 5 piston into the pan. So when we started draining the oil, thinking that we had a lifter problem and started hearing clunks, that was the first indication that we fucked up. And it was royally fucked up.
no, just a lifter problem.
Just a lifter problem. No big deal.
Dropped a
When we pulled because I think Richie helped me take that apart, or it might have been Preston that was there helping me take that apart, but we took the crank out of it and we were like, oh, that's fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with that. And then we dropped it and the thing split. And I was like, well, fuck me. That's, shit's meant. We'll put that in the pile with the wiped out camshaft, and this whole motor is just going to scrap. I think the only thing that got saved off of that was the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold because they had all my sensors on it, and it was easier to just swap them onto the new motor.
yeah. Holy cow.
That poor motor was the one that it was in a Jeep I had gotten off of Richie that Richie had driven around for a little while, never had
Oh
a
yeah.
problem. Put it in, and in 2 runs, it did that.
Gave up. Richie, what did you do to the motor you gave Luke?
Hey, it was fine for me. Don't
It
be
was one of-
blaming me. He's the one with the history.
It was one of those things, though, where the thing drove itself into the shop. We took the engine out of it. We put it in my rig. I drove my rig around for like a week with no problem. Wheeled it. No problems out of it. One bad bump on a slightly like dry day, and it caught traction and it just stalled out. And then when I restarted it, it was just clacking and knocking, and it sounded like I bent a push rod.
Sound like a
Sounds like
warranty. Yeah.
Sounds like you spun a rod bearing with the way that stopped, because that's how mine was.
I wouldn't doubt it, and then that just ate everything else in that cylinder.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's funny as fuck. The detonation of AMC products is always a entertaining time. What's been the most reliable of the AMC motors you've dealt with?
The 4.0s. I've had.
Rat.
Sorry, but I've had some XJs. Like I say, that's I mean, 280 some thousand miles on it. I had a friend of mine I worked with. He drove an XJ to work every day, and he told me one time. He said, "Well, this thing gives up the ghost. I'm gonna buy a new one. Gives up the ghost. I'm gonna buy a new one." We worked together for 10 years. He kept driving it, and finally, like after 12 years, he come in with something new, and I said, "Oh, the XJ finally lay down on you. What happened?" He said, "No." He said, "I am just sick and tired of driving it. I gave up. I bought something new. It still runs." So, but they've been good motors. Like I say, I'm a V8 guy. I like the V8s, but all the V8s, those motors are early 60s technology. The 4.0, I know several personal ones that have nearly 300,000 and over 300,000 miles on them, and they just kept going.
My body is over 300,000. I don't know what the highest mileage motor that's been in it is. I just know that it's had multiple clusters in it. The original cluster got pulled out right at I forget exactly what it was. I want to say it was 310 something, 320 something. And it was doing that thing that they all slowly develop where the gauges just quit working one by one, and it was a dead cluster that was giving the CAN bus problem.
Right. Yeah. I had that on my Dodge truck on my 2000. It's a Chrysler Products Electronics.
Yep.
I was so smart.
Don't tell mine that. My cluster is doing good.
Yeah, it's weird too, because a lot of them will behave themselves for quite a long time, and then suddenly they'll just randomly decide that they're going to have an issue. It's fucking awesome. I guess that's kind of just what you expect out of that era.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like stuff from the early 2000s, late 90s was like the right cars were reliable. Like if you had, there was a subset. Obviously, there's a bunch of junky stuff that was out, but that's every era. I guess you'd say the same for reliability too. But
you really think about it, most of those cars, people they fully expect to get 100,000 miles of service out of them. I mean, that's like a minimum. And
oh yeah, it's more than
people
that. It's 250.
Yeah, really. People in the 60s and 70s did not expect to get. I mean, you were getting $100,000, people was like shaking your hand and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The build quality, in a lot of cases, wasn't good.
Mhm.
That's what we would like to look back nostalgia wise and think. I mean,
Yep.
I suppose
mean-
you're probably right about that because, like, back in the day, call it the late 80s, early 80s, what was the actual, like, service life on a vehicle? 100,000 was getting up there?
Well, the
75
odometers only
miles,
had
most people, if they could, they were looking to trade. They were looking to get out of it because losing its reliability,
Yeah.
that you could count on.
Meanwhile, I'm driving a 2001 Dodge Ram with 270,000 miles on it. Graham, what's your truck got on it?
around that, a little less, not by much.
Yeah,
I
Yeah, I
think a
don't-
little
you're
less.
in
It
the
could be
same boat.
wrong.
I don't know.
I'm like
got-
190.
Yeah. So,
All of
you
my
know.
reliable vehicles got over 100,000 miles on.
Yep.
I got a 05 Dodge, 05 Rubicon. Even my wife's 2017 or 2016 JK's got 140,000 miles on it, and I'm not even close to thinking about trading it.
So, with how long you've been around, what's the biggest thing that you've seen change in the sport? And has it been a good thing or a bad thing?
The biggest thing I've seen change is the widespread availability of choices for things to improve your vehicle. Oh, used to be, like tires. Look at what tire technology is. You could back in the day it was nobody really knew what Interco was. They were just getting started in the 70s and 80s, so you had gumbo mudders, Denman groundhogs, or some kind of mud tire. Uh, Now we've got manufacturers bringing out stickies and big tires. Who would have ever thought some major manufacturer would reliably bring 40-inch plus tires with specific tread compounds to the market? Who would think that you would have 10 or 20 different styles of locking differential? You get custom chrome moly that you go out and buy a friggin' JK and off the shelf order custom axles, transfer cases, everything. You don't have to fabricate if you don't want to build an incredibly capable trail rig out of the box. All you got to do is be able to unbolt and bolt on stuff and plug and play. That's a world of difference that I'm gonna say is good. If you're somebody like like we are, that like to push the envelope of what a vehicle can do and try, like to have that accessibility to parts. I mean, back in the day, I used to have to write Lloyd Novak of Novak Enterprises a letter to ask him uh, for information, and suggestions about stuff like that. And now, I mean, literally,
That's
I wrote him.
crazy.
Was 16 years old, and he was kind enough to take time to write a letter back to me and answer. I bought stuff from Dick's Seat Pack out west, for catalog, and it just now shit. You put sticky tires in on Google, and there's 50 places. I mean, many people know Scott Goforth. Everybody in the country knows Scott Goforth because he sells stickies to everybody in the country.
Yep.
Awesome to be able to go out and get all of that stuff compared to how it used to be. The availability is the biggest thing, the biggest change that I've seen in aftermarket and the support of the aftermarket. I like to look at positive things. I'm not a negative person. There's obviously some negative side effects. I have lost more places to ride locally than there are places left to ride, even with some of the private areas that have been developed. Mountain City, Tennessee. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
There was trails there called Calalente Trail System. There was 6,500 acres there. And the guy that owned the property, Mr. Brown, we could go in and we cut so many trails in the early 2000s and helped cut trails, different groups up there. We had just free reign on that property, and that was only one property. You had 3,500 property on the other side of town in Mountain City called Cracker's Neck. I liked it even better. That was an awesome place to wheel, and it's gone. Elkin, North Wilkesboro. We used to have places you could ride in North Carolina. Everybody knows about Tellico, but like I say, Tellico's gone. But there was Robbinsville. There was trails in Elkin, North Carolina, and it's just, I miss that. That's not good. But there's still places to go. I still have the ability to go, and like I say, I can as a man that worked for a living. I can order beadlocks and sticky tires. They're not racer or out of reach or super high end. I run chrome moly axles in 3 different vehicles. I could afford to do that and raise a family and keep a house. I had a good job, but I could afford to do that. That stuff was accessible. So that's nice. I to be able to do it.
Yeah, I have to say it's super nice to have a problem and then, be able to just go, "Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yep, I
cool.
keep breaking my front axle shafts. There's a chrome moly axle shaft. It costs $200 for the single shaft. All right, sweet. The whole set is $850.
Right,
Awesome.
yeah. And you used to be limited to what you could upgrade out of the junkyard. Back in the 80s, maybe people were just starting to look at some of that. I can't remember exactly when I first started seeing that come online, but it really didn't start hitting widespread till the late 90s, 2000.
Yeah, I had a early Bronco Dana 44. It was one of the first axles set up for a Cherokee on the East Coast.
Yep.
And I think that axle was built in 94. I fucking hated that thing by the time I was done with it because it was just a fucking piece of shit to me. But, hey, it was a cool piece of history and it lived on and did its thing well after I had it. But yeah, the 90s into the 2000s, I think a lot of stuff really started to take off. And then from the 2000s on, right, you can go or especially the 2020s on, you can go and build a 14-bolt steer axle out of a catalog at this point. It's kind of wild.
You don't even have to build it. You call Adam Woodley, wide open design. I want this. I want to call East Coast Gear Supply.
Well, that's what I mean.
Just track. You, like I say, you don't have to go out in the shop and cut, and you don't have to learn how to calculate pressure angles for your splines so you can make your own cutter out of triangular inserts to cut your own splines and cutting spline out. Nobody even knows what I'm talking about except for a handful of people.
Unfortunately, I do.
They call Curry or Crane or somebody like that. That's nice. I mean, it is. I mean, I like knowing about that kind of stuff because that's mechanical stuff is fascinating to me. But not everybody's mechanically inclined, and so I literally talked to a guy last week down at the Jeep Outpost in Leland, Florida. A guy ordered a brand new Hemi Wrangler X and came in and ordered $15,000 worth of parts to go on it. Truck had miles on it. If you've got that kind of money, that's the very, short of buying a buggy.
Yep.
That's the high end. But look at how many people have buggies.
Yep.
It's crazy. Oh.
And realistically, like you can build a JL or a JK and with decent parts for you can probably keep it under 20 grand and have something that's comfortable. You could drive it on
Yeah.
the road and you
Exactly.
could drive it in the woods and it would keep up with buggies. It's
Think of how
Yep.
easy, if you didn't want to go to try to keep up with Bucky's, but you just wanted to do good trail riding.
Yep.
You
Oh,
could
just
go
factory. Put tires on it. If you get one
build
with
a
a
good
locker.
buy a Rubicon JK and put a lift in 37s on it.
Yep.
And
And
you're
you can
done.
I've seen, JK Rubicons under 20 grand. Take vehicle and everything right now. You if you really wanted to, I mean, you could do it even cheaper, but you could buy something nice, decent, reliable, comfortable, be in it for 20 grand
Yep.
with
Easily.
tires and a winch and the whole nine.
Unrelated to that, but some new vehicle or newer vehicle prices I've been finding kind of wild. I was just casually scrolling, looking around at dailies, and you can buy a like mid-teens Mustang for about 15 grand and get 400 horsepower through a 6-speed in an American car that you can just go buy parts for off the shelf for a retardedly cheap price. I'm really surprised by how cheap some of the JKs are getting. I saw a stock sport model one for $6,000. Like it doesn't have any features, but fuck, for 6 grand, that leaves a lot of headroom. And
Yeah,
you can have modern features like heat and air conditioning and take the top off. What the fuck?
we our club, the club that I'm in, the Trailblazers. Pretty sure it's the oldest club in the Southeast. It started in '71. In 21, we were going to celebrate our 50th anniversary as a club that has continuously operated, no gaps in years. Basically, offered a trail ride every single month of the year since September of '71. And so
Wow.
we got the big idea we would buy a Jeep and raffle it off and raise money. And so
Mhm.
we did. And we ended up buying, I mean, it was 21, but we bought a 2007 four-door JK. That was in decent shape, had some high miles on it, but was in good shape. And we didn't spend $10,000 on it then, and was able to get it and raffle it off. But yeah, it's my friend of mine just very recently bought like a 2014 four-door Rubicon, and I think he spent like $14,500
Yeah, it's
and less than a
wild.
100,000. And I think it was like 60 some thousand miles. So it was. I mean, so they they had really peaked price rise. If you look at like Gladiators, I want a Jeep Gladiator, and they
Mhm.
were expensive 2 years ago, and they've really fallen a lot, new and used. I've seen 21 and 22 Gladiators, even Rubicons for like $35,000
Which
with sub 50,000 miles on.
we have to be a little thankful for because with how things were for the last couple of years, it's kind of nice to see stuff actually starting to come back down to almost fucking affordable again.
Oh yeah, heck yeah, the economy's been berserk since COVID.
Yeah. Um, I'm just gonna leave that one alone. But
Right,
yeah,
yeah. Talk about everybody that's lived through it knows what's what.
Mm.
yeah, I'm sure that all of our listeners have some thoughts on that matter, but just gonna leave that one alone for now. The
We'll talk about Jeeps.
Yeah, Jeeps are cool. Um, what do you think has been the best thing that Jeep has done in the time that you've been kind of observing?
I think the biggest thing that they did was actually start paying attention to the real person that goes off road, to offer the heavy duty transfer case with the low gears, to offer actual genuine real locking differentials, in the Rubicon. That's the biggest thing. Prior to that, no matter what vehicle you got, except for certain Land Cruisers, they offered some mechanical locking differentials, or but you just didn't see that widespread availability. Certainly not in any American manufacturer's vehicle. Even Jeeps, they even though Jeep offered a granny transmission in the CJs, they never offered more than the trash lock, limited slip in the rear end, track lock.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep. Same as an open difference. So when they first introduced the Rubicon in the TJs in 2003, that was the real, from a person like me that wants to use a Jeep for what I think a Jeep's built for. I like pretty Jeeps and nice Jeeps and street Jeeps. I've got one, but I like to take my Jeeps in the woods and use them and be out on the trail and stuff like that. So to have that just leave the dealer's lot with genuine locking differentials, a Dana 44 front end, which, believe it or not, they offered a Dana 44 front end in South America in CJs and those types of vehicles, and overseas in the 70s. But it was never made that way in the United States.
well, they never cared that much about the United States. Let's be honest here.
The foreign platforms really had a lot of cool shit.
The manufacturers were selling all the vehicles they could make, so they didn't care. There was no kind of pressure to be able to do that.
Yeah,
They didn't how much bigger the market could be.
I think Dodge and Chrysler and Jeep and all that in the 2003 through 2007, 2008 deserves a lot of credit for kind of pushing the envelope a bit. We were talking about a couple episodes ago the Dodge Power Wagons and how they were a massive shakeup in the truck world, because all of a sudden you're getting a factory winch, you're getting factory locking diffs, factory unlocking sway bar, and that was just really, really different compared to everything else that was out and about, coming from the second gen version of the Dodge trucks to the third gen. Like, you got a Hemi, you got a actually almost okay automatic transmission. They weren't great, but they were a bit better than the second gen autos.
Right, they weren't.
410s and locking diffs in a factory truck. Honestly, fucking cool.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, that's like I say, I like old Jeeps. I have, several CJs. Those are my that's my sweet spot, my what I grew up with, and nostalgia wise, I really like a lot. But I ain't gonna lie, I love the options that are available now, not just in the aftermarket, but like you say, in the factory. And I'm not a Ford guy by any stretch. I have zero interest in a Bronco, but look, the atmosphere is such that Ford thought that it was worthwhile to bring the Bronco back to compete with that market segment that the Wrangler's in, and they didn't just bring it back; they brought it back with with off-road versions.
Oh yeah, like 6 or 7 different versions of the thing.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have put that effort into it if it hadn't been for the explosion in popularity.
And it's not just like let's recycle the name and put it in a car that doesn't look anything like the original, like the Blazer. It's like, I mean, I looked at one was driving the opposite way as me and my buddy today, and I looked at the grill and I was like for a second I thought it was an old one, because the grill was, it like it had a classic look to it, and I had to sort of double take and look at the headlights and be like, okay, no, that's a new one.
Yeah, those are LEDs.
yeah. But like the grill, I just looked at the grill really quick, and it has the same characteristics of the old one. And from a distance, it just kind of looked same-ish shape, and didn't think anything of it. I wasn't like looking for Broncos. I was just, this realization that it actually, is like very similar. Like I knew there were similarities, but like that for me was like, oh, like they were heavily influenced by the original as much as they could be, and to bring it into a modern.
You can see the inspiration is there. It's clearly there.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
with the Grand Wagoneer.
No, that thing is hideous.
I also got to give some credit to Toyota, because Toyota is offering on their higher end Tacomas and their 4Runners, you can get the locking rear diffs and off-road features, which I'm not saying that's the best thing out there, but like at least Toyota's doing something.
Consistently offered those types of things. I've got a friend of mine, he's got a TRD 4Runner locking rear end. That's is one.
Hell, my 2012 Ford had a locking rear diff, which was kind of nice. But
yeah,
I feel like we're starting to slow down a little bit. So, you got any questions for us there, James?
Oh, I appreciate the invite. I'll shout out to my buddy Daniel Dodd. I know he's kind of instrumental in helping us get together, and Leah Hockman of She Crawls. She had also, I think, made mention of me. I just appreciate the opportunity to come out and run my mouth and talk about the good old days and where we're at now.
I appreciate that. Have you got any cool small animal facts?
Any cool small animal facts?
Yep.
Cool to me, maybe. Oh,
interesting, unique. We like unique.
My daughter had a pet hedgehog, and they're really neat little animals. I don't know if you've ever paid attention to a hedgehog, but look them up and check them out. They're just as cool as can be. And so I'm a guy. I like Jeeps and trucks and guns and playing in the mud and working in the shop and going out and stuff like that. But if I could, I'd have a pet hedgehog.
You know what? Was not expecting that. And that's cool as fuck.
God, keep them guessing.
Yep.
Indeed.
That's the only thing on my Instagram that I follow outside of Jeeps is one hedgehog.
Hey, you gotta have the animals on Instagram too.
That's
Indeed.
right.
What is your favorite V8 to swap in?
Oh, we know this.
It doesn't have to be the AMC brand. It can be the GM brand as well. Hey, we gotta have some support for the LS.
So I have a friend of mine that was just lost very recently, unexpectedly, and he was like, "LS swap everything, LS swap everything." And so I always, being who I am, I had to give him grief. And it's don't drink the Kool-Aid. If it's an AMC Jeep, it's got to stay AMC Jeep. So we'll go with the 360 again.
Hey, I had to give you the opportunity to admit that the LS is better, but you know what? Brand loyalty is worth something. So, hey, we're here for that too.
If this was a private conversation that wasn't going public, we might have a different conversation. But I AMC Jeep, man, that is my identity.
He's just keeping up the facade. He's probably got LSs in every Jeep.
Do not have a single L. Have one diesel and a whole lot of AMC crap.
Yeah.
Why is the best tow rig a Cummins?
That's it, and you said it correctly. It's like people said, when I got I was a GM guy forever. I had big block Chevrolets. I've owned a bunch of them. We could talk about Chevrolet square bodies and big blocks, and I used to tell people motors started at 454 and went up from there. But I decided to, with the fuel economy and the power of a turbo diesel, that's just kind of the way to go if you're towing.
Mhm.
And so I bought a Dodge. And these, why'd you buy a Dodge? You're a GM guy. Why'd you buy a Dodge? I said, I did not. Did not. I said, I researched the diesels. And basically, there's the Cummins turbo diesel, and then these knockoffs. I said, and when I bought that Cummins diesel, it had a Dodge truck wrapped all the way around it.
Yep.
When I was
Certainly feels like that some days.
Get you every time.
when I was researching and trying to decide what I wanted to do, if I wanted to get rid of my Ford or not, well,
Yeah.
I decided I was going to buy an NV5600 with a Cummins strap to it, and
Yeah.
He's
unfortunately,
just jealous.
it
He
just-
watched mine drive all over the place, and he needed one. I mean, that 2012 was soulless, anyways.
It was a great truck, though. It was a really good fucking truck. I have
Except
to
for
give
seventh
credit.
gear, it didn't like seventh gear or something like that, right?
Six.
And that's
Yep,
just
it would drive
wrong.
for
It shouldn't have 7 gears. That's way too many.
It only had 6.
Automatics
so,
should have like 3 minimum or maximum. That's all they can have, and an
Um,
overdrive. But those usually just cause problems, so just skip it. Ugh.
the I found it to be a fun fucking truck. It's got a soul, you know.
hmm
Let's see. So, Richie, you got
Yes,
any
sir.
questions? Because you've been fucking quiet this episode. Last episode, you decided you wanted to fucking talk, so we're throwing you under the bus.
I don't have any questions, to be honest.
He just now woke up.
Apparently, I'm under marching orders to give Cody a hard time, but since you both have 35s, they're both the same brand of 35, and you both have Spartan lockers in the front axle, I got confused as to who I'm supposed to be giving a hard time on.
Oh well, I do have one question. Seeing where you brought up Cody, what is your favorite DOT tire?
That's a good one.
That's a good question. So when anybody talks to me about tire recommendations, there's 3 categories, and this is the way I do it. I said, and I always look at it from the perspective of trail riding, 4-wheeling. So the stickies at the top, they're the game changer. There's a reason why we spend money for stickies. If you can't do stickies, or you're going to spend some time on the road, but you're leaning towards trail riding, then it's Swampers.
Okay.
If you need something TSLs. It's just TSLs outperform anything else. I've had creepy crawlers. I've had groundhogs. I've had basically everything. Obviously 99% of my experience is East Coast wheeling. So it's a lot of mud and loose dirt and loose rock. So Swampers. But as far as DOT tires, like say if you're talking about a modern radial, I kind of look at it like this. There's not one of the premium brands, say your BF Goodrich, your Maxxis, your Falcon, your Mickey
Your Nitto.
Thompson, your Nitto, definitely. All of those are basically really equal. Some situations one will perform a little bit better than the other. I've had personal bad luck with Wrangler MTRs, but I've got other guys in our club that run them that have good luck with them. So I'm running Maxxis Razor MTs on my Rubicon, and I've been really happy with them. I run BFG mud terrains. I don't think that you can go wrong with them. They've just been a good all around tire. So for me personally, I don't think one. I think what you look for is uh, out of those three categories. Can I afford stickies? Is it a trail rig only? Can I live with super stompers on the street? Or if I'm going with a radial, then you buy one of the top brand, whichever you can get the best price on. Now, I will give a shout out to BF Goodrich uh, for the simple fact that they have always, up until the last year, broadly supported the sport. They've donated our club. I mean, we're a local club, we're statewide, but we're still just a single club. They've donated more than one set of tires to us over the years. They donated a set of tires for us to give away in our raffle. They donated a set of tires for us for our raffle Jeep. They've donated a set of tires when we lost a member to cancer. The guy Scott Fields that actually got the URI trails opened and recognized by the National Forest as an OHV.
Wow.
They've been very generous, and so if I can't buy BFG, I've got a couple of sets of BFGs here at the house because I have so many freaking Jeeps. So I will lean that way a little bit, but in general, I think all the top manufacturers are very competitive in their and you couldn't really go wrong with any of those names we mentioned, like the Falcons or the Nittos, or the Maxxis or the BFGs. You know, I've missed a couple, but any say of your top 10 brands right now.
I would agree with that. And I think that we're also really lucky that the market has started to broaden. On the note of stickies, last episode we were talking with a guy about the new Razor stickies coming out. We still haven't gotten any information. We're 3 days out difference between recording that episode and this episode. But I'm really
One of the
hopeful that
I
they come
saw
out.
was that you were hand building those for the race program, but you know that's good. Things like that lead to uh, getting them to the general public for general. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but I remember when they come out with red labels, you had to be part of BFG's race program to get red labels.
Well, that's
Oh,
probably when Graham's set of red labels was fucking built.
hey,
They are old.
I remember talking to Gary Ederline, who was one of the engineers for BFG, or he was over that program at Teleco years ago at one of the Dixie runs when they were talking about these next generations of tires and stuff like that. And to see that, like I say, become readily available is just amazing. And
Yeah.
then to have not just BFG doing it, not just a more or less specialty tire company like Interco. You know, Interco's you know they're more in our niche, but you got people like Mickey Thompson and you know they're building specific tires for this niche, big manufacturer. And
Well, the
then like
part that I really like about the fucking Mickeys is they rocked into the building and said, "Hey, we're gonna offer a sticky at a reasonable price. Have fun,
yeah,
everyone else."
I
And
couldn't
I'm
uh,
really
I
hoping
couldn't
that
advertise if it wasn't for the price of the Baja Bosses. I mean, that's
Yep.
that the Go Forth got me 437-inch stickies for less than $2,000. I mean, not
Yeah.
that's all. You know, because you spend on a regular set of 35s or 37s now, you spend close to that
yeah,
on
Mhm.
a DOT tire.
I paid $6.25 a tire for mine, and I got mine through Discount Tire to just
Mm-hmm.
the local shop. I didn't
Right.
have any issues. I got them the part number. I got them the purchase, or the quote from another website. They just matched it. They called their guy and they showed up. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely is.
Alrighty. So I think for a fitting final question, we've been trying to end them on the up and up. Oh, I almost forgot. We do have to give our one sponsor a quick little shout out here. So go check out Crawler Off-Road. The code BCOP10 gets you 10% off at checkout and lets them know that we sent you over there. So go check
Can I
them
give
out. Awesome dudes.
my brand sponsors a shout out?
Absolutely. Also, shout out your Instagram and social media. We're supposed to ask this question at the beginning, and
He
somehow
mentioned
we
it.
end up.
I think he mentioned it.
My big thing is AMC Jeepman on Instagram,
Yes.
and I'm a brand ambassador for Thor's Lightning Off-Road Air Systems, AMC Jeepman 10 for 10%, Kaiser Willys classic Jeep parts, 10% there with AMC Jeep 10. Then I'm a bearded man, so Van Leeuwen Brothers, if you got a beard, they make the best beard products I've ever used. I've had a beard for over 40 years. So AMC Jeepman 10 at Van Leeuwen Brothers.
I'll have to check them out because I've been noticing that I keep getting split ends in my beard, and my beard is now at the point where it's long enough that if I like look down at something, I see them, and it pisses me off. Great.
I literally no lie. I've I've had a beard. I graduated high school with a beard. I've been clean shaven one day since I was 18. And this Van Leeuwen, and I've tried tons of stuff. My first wife was a cosmetologist. I had access to whatever kind of hair product you could ever get. Nothing compared to this stuff. These are two guys. They're off-roaders. They're Jeepers. They live out in El Centro, California, and they hand make all of this stuff, and it's reasonably priced. Just hit its link on my Instagram, AMC Jeepman. Go check it out.
Yeah, can't beat
Sweet.
that. So our final question for you is, what's a good piece of dad advice or life advice to take us out with?
A good piece of dad advice is invest in yourself and invest in your friends. And by doing that, I mean spend the time, take care of your responsibilities, but don't be a work whore. Spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. Those memories you create are more valuable than anything else you can lay aside. Uh, Especially do it now. Don't put it off. Uh, do it while you can. I have lost way too many people who said, I'll do this one day. And that day never came for them. So go now. Go now. Build memories. Worth more than anything else you can do. Go
Definitely.
after you. Go after them hard.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you said when we were talking on the phone when I first called you about all this with just remember the days are long, but the years are short,
Days are
Put
long,
those
but years.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's it. Put those two together and that's some really solid life advice moving forward and you know,
We'll mention one other small thing. Oh, I'm a Christian, and for me, it's important to let God have a place in your life. There is some value there. Wouldn't be doing service to who I serve if I didn't suggest you look into that. And if you got any questions, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well.
well, on that note, folks, thank you all for listening. Make sure to go give him a follow. Leave a review. It helps us out. And have a good night, everyone.
Thanks again. Really appreciated it.